All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Ask Sympraxis. Today's topic is working across multiple tenants in the artist formerly known as Office 365, now known as Microsoft 365, as of yesterday's announcement of build.
I'm super impressed that you got the patching, the semantic versioning patch number correct on this one. This is excellent.
Julie, I'm just trying to
Dev
live up to.
101.
It's not a breaking fix. Once you put
That's
in the
correct.
once you put in the right bullets.
Actually,
Okay.
technically speaking, then this should be 2.0.0 since we moved the Teams meeting and apparently no one can find us. So it is a breaking change, and we are V2.
All right, cool. We'll rev that
Major
later.
release. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's
New build.
Yep.
New build.
New builds.
Okay.
Gulp serve npm version.
All right. So today's topic, working across Office 365 tenants. Think you know the team, the different roles, points of view that we bring. We wanted to touch on a couple of common scenarios. One's collaborating with external partners, right? They send you a Teams meeting there via their tenant. You're logged into yours, etc., or their SharePoint site. Mergers and acquisitions, being able to toggle very quickly between old co and new co if they have separate Office 365 tenants. Obviously, software development lifecycle considerations, if you have separate tenants for development, staging, or production, being able to easily move across them. And then consultants like us, not atypical that we're working across 5 or 7 tenants in the span of a week or even more. So the ability to kind of, sorry, Mark?
A slow week.
A slow week.
Not to be confused with spies like us.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Great movie, by the way.
It's okay. It's okay. We're Americans. All right. So
Yes.
might have loved that one.
Oh.
So those are some common scenarios. Shelley, just as our guest today, any other scenarios that you've
Yeah, she put in migration projects. That's a good point.
But is migration projects not that kind of mergers and acquisitions, old co, new co?
Not necessarily. I mean, at partners, we're going to end up having to change it because they're going to change their branding. And so we have Partners Healthcare, but we're going to become Mass General Brigham.
Okay, so it's just old tenant, new tenant, not necessarily old company, new company. Same company,
Right.
New tenant.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, because there's no tenant move yet.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. No, thanks. That's a good one to add to this. I will add to this. And some thoughts to consider. So this is where I want folks to kind of jump in on this. Like, there's ways that we all have solved this problem, but I think there's some emergent best practices. And Todd, do you want to start? I know this is something near and dear to your heart. You spent a lot of time on this.
Yeah, this was something that perplexed and befuddled and confused me for a long time as a consultant. And it was the whole multiple tenants. As the company I worked for started doing everything in Office 365, then that became the center of my work. Then the customers I was working with. So I did the whole dance that everybody did a couple of years ago. I had like Chrome open for my thing, and then I would open up incognito mode, bank mode, whatever fun names you have for it, for whatever the customer at the time I was working on was on. But that had the bad side effect in that I couldn't save the credentials. So every time I logged into the customer site, I'd have to type the credentials. I couldn't save any URLs because it was, in private, it was incognito, so I would lose all that. The other thing that I learned pretty quickly after that, but slower than a lot of my compatriots, is that if I was in Chrome, it opened up another incognito window. All of the incognito windows run in the same sandbox, so I couldn't go to customer number 2 in a second incognito window and customer number 3 in a third. So then I had to do then some Internet Explorer, then one on private, some Firefox. It became untenable, as they say. And that's when I discovered the beauty of profiles. Now, Chrome's not the only one that does it. Firefox does it. They call it containers, I think. I don't know if Internet Explorer does it. Chromium Edge does it because it's based on Chrome. So it's just the idea now that I can have a browser, multiple browsers, and I've got 5 of them up right now. Full browsers, I can save favorites, save passwords, whatever, but they all have a different set of saved passwords and all of that. And it has absolutely, I speak in hyperbole all the time, but it has absolutely revolutionized how I work with Office 365 now. And part of the issue, we all save passwords, for different sites, so you could get around it. But with Office 365, every tenant's going to the same site. Everybody's going to office.com, so you can't even save all of the passwords in your browser and try to maneuver it that way. So profiles really is the best way for me to handle it.
Well,
It has absolutely just changed my life.
I was going to point that out. That's actually the password thing. We all, as a team, use 1Password,
Yeah.
which I enjoy significantly. Some of you less than others, I suppose. But with the multiple profiles, you can add the 1Password extension into each of those profiles, thereby getting access to all of your passwords for all the things that you might need to do in each one of those things. And that can actually help. So if you lose your login for that particular one, at least you can just pull down the password manager and have it right there. So it does help a little bit with that too.
And
Having a password manager is all I need.
One thing about that, Julie.
They all go to the same URL, but I've got them all named, O365 tenant name, so I can always find it.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice about the 1Password extension is because you've got different profiles, you have to install it on each profile.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. So adding the extension to each profile so that you have it in each profile. So because I find that even if I'm in a tenant, there might be things that I'm going to that require me to have a password, and then I'm switching out to go copy the password from somewhere else. So it's nice to have added the password extension into each profile.
Yeah.
So the profiles bit, that's step number one for managing all this. And it really, I've seen people push back against it, and I just can't understand why people I don't know, it just takes some time, I guess, to get used to it, but it has changed everything. I've got a ton of profiles now. I just, by default, that's just what I do. Everybody gets a profile. You get a profile. You get a profile.
Okay, Oprah.
Exactly.
I have multiple profiles for the same client too, because a lot of clients will give me an on Microsoft, like a cloud account and a local account, maybe more than one local account, maybe more than one cloud account. So I might have like 4 or 5 just for a tenant, profiles just for one tenant. Simply to switch between profiles, especially deving too, right? Like if I'm developing something and I want to check my user account against my admin account or whatever and switch back and forth using that. I think we talked about that from the development perspective.
Yeah, and that's actually another consideration that I'm really embarrassed I didn't mention before is even if you're not a consultant or multiple tenants or all that, one of the things that I always preach is you should never use your personal account for administrative things. So like my Todd account should never be a tenant admin. And so even if you are just working with one company, a second profile that is your second account, that is your tenant admin account, because you're both probably going to start going by going to office.com or whatever. So that's a good use for it too.
I'll make a note of that. That's a great change.
Yeah,
great addition to this slide.
That should have been in there at the beginning. So Chrome, Chromium Edge, CREDGE, affectionately known as, also does profiles. It actually added some new profile support. So one of the problems that we have with profiles, at least I did in Chrome, and I haven't used Chrome for a while now, is whichever profile in Chrome I was touching last, if I click a link somewhere else, that link opens up in that browser. So a link in an email or a team or whatever. Chromium Edge added this deal where you can handle that. So one of the things it says is always open in this profile. So if most of the time, if I'm clicking a link, it's because it's a personal thing, because all my work stuff is already coming from inside of a browser. So those links stay inside that profile. But if you links in Slack because you're doing whatever, you can say always open in this one profile, which is nice. And then they added some smarts to it. And I haven't quite figured out what the smarts are. And honestly, the smarts aren't that smart yet. But you can tell it to guess which profile a link is for. So for instance, we've got a time tracking program here at Sympraxis, and I would hope that it would be smart enough to figure that out, where if I'm in an email and Mark says, hey, you didn't put your time in, dummy, go here and do it. Even if I have been watching funny cat videos or something in another profile, if I click that link, it should be smart enough to know to open it in my Sympraxis profile. I've not got that set up. I did submit a user voice that said I wish there was a way we could define URLs, to map URLs to profiles.
Oh, right. Like come up with this is the list for this profile. That would be really
Yes, that would be great.
Firefox, the new Firefox also supports that profiles, that smart profile opening, like open this in this browser. And the other thing that Firefox, I've seen Stefan do a couple of times, Stefan Bauer, he uses Firefox for doing dev now, is that you get multiple profiles in tabs and they're color coded. So that's an interesting change. Yeah.
That was, he showed me that, and that was a game changer for me.
Yeah. So you're on Firefox, are you?
I use Chrome for just about everything, but I use, when I'm like, I've got 6 tenants that I'm managing right now, and I use them all in the web view. So I have the web app and I have them all set up and I just have them in one spot.
Yeah, I'm really thinking about changing to Firefox for my development environment, simply to take advantage of that, because I feel like that would be so helpful.
Topic for another day, but the dev tools in Firefox are better than the dev tools in Chrome.
I've heard that as well. He has also preached that, and I have yet to test it. So that's so it's good to hear.
They used to definitely be better for years.
They were the de facto standard. I mean, I remember when Derek showed me how to do that. Look, you can change your CSS inline. That must have been 15 years ago at least, Derek. But I was like, wow, I didn't know how to do that. Oh, how far we've come or fallen, depending on how you look at it.
Just to bring it back, just looking at we're about the, that's why I'm here. We're at about the halfway point. I want to make sure we've got plenty to say and plenty of thoughts, but I'd rather hear from Shelley or from other attendees if you have specific questions about working across multiple tenants.
I'm good at the moment. Let's proceed.
All right. Thanks.
Notifications was one that we mentioned as we were talking about this, and that's the idea that inside of the Office 365 web experience, you get a chime if you get an email or whatever, and if you have multiple profiles and logged in separately to all that, then you can go in for each individual user and shut those off. It's under your picture and all that. Before I realized that was happening, that drove me crazy. I'd have all these profiles going to all these dongs and noises, dings and dongs. And at first I thought it was just the sounds that echo around in my head. But then it's a different tone, different timbre, but that's what that was. So if you do, have multiple windows open, because then you get it once from your email client, once from the browser, and make sure to look at all that.
That's a great call, Scott. That's akin to having I don't know what browser tab the music is coming from, because I have 8 browsers open, 15 tabs in each, whatever.
Yeah, Chrome will show you the little sound thing if the tabs make you sound, which is probably how I chased that down the first time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Teams notifications don't use the same framework as anything else, so they just pop up in random places. If you have couple episodes of Teams going on, you can get very confused by that.
They do their own thing. Yeah. Yep.
I heard it's worse on the Mac. I don't have one, so I don't know. But
wow, that seems nearly impossible. My mind shudders to think what that experience is like.
It's just all a general pain in the butt on the Mac when it comes to the notifications in general are a pain. Yeah. So it's just I think I turn them all off regardless.
Well, that's probably part of the problem. In Windows, they mostly got notifications tamed, so our expectations are that we can go to one spot and silence all notifications, and then Teams is like, hey, over here.
Yeah, right.
We talked about this, no notifications.
Yeah.
That might be part of it. Do you want me to take the desktop apps as well?
Please.
Okay, so once we, like Julie talked about, we have all these client things and we're doing documentation and development and all this. We end up opening apps, Word docs and Excel docs and all that. And those desktop apps also understand multiple users as well. And it's important to kind of see how that works and understand what you're doing, because I know still, as of yesterday, we'll open up a document from, I'll be inside of a profile, say open in desktop client, Word will open, but I won't pay attention to who I'm logged in as, and then that user doesn't have access to the document or doesn't have access to save it. So there's that whole mess with that, and I've got a screenshot in a later slide that shows where that's at. And it's just a matter of telling Word, access this document is Todd's work account, his home account. However, I did want to mention the autosave issue. So I've become very dependent on autosave in the desktop apps, and that's the thing in the upper left-hand corner. You just say autosave, and it just saves behind you in the background. If you're not logged in as the right user, and you're logged in as a user that has read permission but not write permission, or if the app is just not completely sussing all that out correctly, you may think you're auto-saving when in reality you're not saving. and then you just close it and you lose stuff. So I've done that in the last couple of weeks. So beware of all that.
I thought I ran into the autosave yesterday, Todd, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I've done the autosave. In reality, I saved something and I thought that I was putting it in a particular location, but apparently PowerPoint decided that it should go to the root of my OneDrive, and I couldn't find it anymore. I'm like, so I had closed PowerPoint, and I'm like, my presentation is gone. And then, in doing some like navigating, I finally found it. I'm like, wow, okay, that's not where I thought that was going to go, but okay.
So I do that all the time, and the trick that I use is I open the app back up and then go, try to find it.
See the path and the recent documents. Yeah.
Yeah.
I only do that all the time. But that was so the standard ones: Word, Excel, PowerPoint. OneNote handles it, though it's a little clunky, but you can definitely have multiple tenants inside of there. I have a lot of trouble with that, and I use the OneNote 2016 client. I don't use that horrendous abomination that is the UWP OneNote client. It does it, but I have some sync issues.
Todd, I know Emily has some strong opinions about OneNote. Emily, do you have anything to add to that?
Desktop application all the way.
Yeah, Emily and I've discussed this, and I think we're in lockstep on our OneNote strongly held opinions. Yes.
We are.
Are they still pretending that the UWP app is going to be the answer?
No.
Okay.
They came out several months ago.
backtracked.
Yep. Yeah, because they added some new features to the OneNote 2016, like the dark mode and some other stuff. Yeah. Which was interesting because when that whole thing came out and we were all like, no, this UWP is horrible. And their line at the time was, well, we would love to continue to support the 2016 one, but the way we've changed sync, it just won't work. You just won't be able to sync. And then a year later, they're like, we were wrong. Turns out you can sync with it.
I think I need to get the desktop app. I think I'm using the UWP app, and I have all sorts of problems.
If all of your tabs and everything are on the left, that's the UWP. If you have some on the left and some on the top and some on the side, then it's the...
Oh, all right. I am using the UWP app. Maybe that's why I can't do the cool trick Emily showed me with moving my calendar item to a note. That's maybe why it's not working.
Yeah, cool. That also might be why you're just, more anxious during the day, blood pressure a little higher. I think it's probably that one number.
Could be. Absolutely.
I was wondering.
Yeah. Shelly, do you use PowerShell much? Did I hit that one very hard?
I don't use PowerShell at all, so it's all good.
So I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we can skip this part. The bad news is you and I can't be friends anymore.
We will be friends. I will get there as soon as I get out of the weeds of the migration project that I'm on.
Well, once you fix that, talk to Mike, because I won't talk to you, and then he'll tell me you and I can
resume a friendship.
Yes, resume
a cordial relationship.
Let's pause on
I want to use
friendship.
PowerShell.
Yeah. So the good news is I do everything in PowerShell, much like, tabs and all that. I've got multiple PowerShell tabs open. PowerShell has the ability to pull credentials out of the Windows credential store. So once you have this deal where you're working with multiple tenants and multiple accounts and all that, you don't have to type username and password every single time you connect Office 365 or whatever. You can you pull those out of the credential store. The PNP PowerShell, which everybody should use, if nothing else, just because it's fun to alliterate PNP, understands that built in. So you can just say, log into this tenant, use this credential name, everything's good to go. There is when you use to connect to the PNP and I think to SPO, there's a use web parameter. You can use that to get around any kind of crazy authentication your tenant's using. So if you're using MFA, or if you're using MFA that's not Microsoft MFA, things like that. Use web pops you up a web browser, sends the token back to PowerShell. Everything's good to go. If you are using Microsoft MFA, you can go into Azure AD and create an app password and then save that out. And then you can have MFA on all your accounts, but create an app password for PowerShell. It can get in that way. So there's a lot of ways to handle it too. I personally absolutely hate typing passwords. I hate typing passwords to the point where I feel like I just want to take my chances with the bad guys and just not have any passwords. Like I feel like that would be less painful than the hell I go through typing passwords.
This is where the password manager helps. Copy paste, my friend. Copy paste.
And that was another funny thing. So as much as I hate passwords, when I started at Sympraxis, you guys were like, "You're using one password," and I was furious, and I hated it, and I resisted, and now I use it all the time, and I'm offended by any device I can't use it on. Like
right?
anytime.
Now that you're like copy paste or autofill, like that should just happen.
Yep. And I really look down on people that don't use password managers, like a real
and credential manager in PowerShell is like your password manager for that part of the world, because different experience.
Yeah, for the most part, other than that MFA problem, which the tenants that I tend to work in all have MFA on, so I end up using the use web option.
Yeah.
I gotta look at that use web thing. I don't know that one.
It just pops up a little browser window that says username, like you're logging into Office 365, except it'll show you the users that you recently logged in on, so you can click it and it just auths you, which is handy dandy.
Yep. So 5 minutes. So Todd, I know you had some screenshots and we had some resources and follow-up stuff we wanted to share as well.
Take it away.
No, it's just a 5-minute warning. You put your screen grabs in here, and I'm not going to play PowerPoint karaoke. You know what they are and where they are.
Oh, can I advance the slides, or can you advance the slides?
Sure, I can advance the slides. This is the slide advance guy.
Yeah, so this is just, I wanted to put this in so you can see who you're logged in as in Word, because if you're like me, well, your name is the same regardless of which tenant you're in. So it's going to say Todd Clint. Well, not for you guys, but Todd Clint everywhere. So click it, it'll show you, that's my home account. I did put my middle initial in for my home account, so I can always pick that one out, and I don't put it in anywhere else. But then there's the sign in with a different account. So next slide, please. So then that shows up.
With the wrong one.
What?
I just checked and I was logged in with the wrong one.
Exactly. Happens to the best of us. Yeah. And so this is an interesting one because I put in my Sympraxis email address, but it doesn't ask me for the password, even though it's saying sign in, because it's pulling it from, the credential store and it knows who I am. So that's just something to pay attention to. I did not put the after picture in there so that it says Todd Clint, not Todd O. Clint. But yeah, so that's just one. It's really obscure, and you don't think about Word and Excel being logged in as somebody, but it's a thing. And then if you want to hit the next one, that is just me showing off how many profiles I have, and obvious tabs to my own blog there at the top. I like to do that. Yeah, and the syncing between profiles is awesome. I love that. So then all of your favorites and your passwords, if you don't use an external password thing, and collections and all that stuff sync between browsers, so I can do some work here on my desktop, go use my laptop, everything syncs across. Man, do I love the snot out of that.
Yeah, that is a handy one.
So that is it for the screenshots.
So we've in the few minutes we've got left, we put together some resources and takeaways. Some of what Todd alluded to here, he's blogged about in his lovely SharePoint 2010 based blog with those really useful URLs like post ID equals 857 versus 791 versus 837. Those are outstanding.
837 is a really good one.
Oh, I mean, it's no 836, but it stands on its own.
Okay. And Derek, I know you wrote a blog post probably a while ago on Chrome profiles. We've all seen everyone from Jeremy Fake to Beatrice to others do this post, but this is your rendition of it. I think it's a really solid one. We use this all the time.
Yeah, and to give credit with that, I think Jeremy Fake was where I first saw it.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Fake, he said it was great, but I'm like, oh my God, him with the hair again. And I didn't really pay attention to it. And then somebody that I actually like and respect suggested it, and I'm like, oh, this is a pretty good idea. And it reminded me.
It wasn't Becky with the good hair. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So Mark, you had pointed out a really interesting conversation that's kind of ongoing in user voice about Teams. You want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so that's one of the highest ranked user voice items for Teams, and it's all about tenant switching versus just using the same tenant. If you ever use Slack, you're sort of in Slack, you see notifications from all of the Slack accounts that you have, and people want the same thing in Teams. And we struggle with this when we're if I'm connected to Teams as like into the Microsoft tenant, because I get to do some stuff there, then I don't necessarily see the notifications for the stuff in Sympraxis. And that's with the same account. And if you have different accounts, then it's a whole other mess. So people are looking for a much easier sort of central place to watch for notifications, understand when people are trying to talk to them, be able to switch between tenants without having to log out and log back in and all that sort of stuff. And there's just sort of general silence on the Microsoft end on that one. So if you have any interest in having something like that, please go and vote, because even with all the votes, it's still sitting there.
And Mark, how do we say we're going to do this? Because like these are links in the PowerPoint deck, but when we've posted this, the links haven't been clickable.
Yeah, we're talking about putting all these links up on the web page where we have Sympraxis listed. So
cool.
Yeah, we have on the website for Sympraxis, we've got the upcoming topics as well as past topics and the video recording that we have that we're doing right now. So we post a link to the video, and I'm going to be adding these resources as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. That's a big deal. It's going to work great. So before we wrap up, does anyone have anything else to add? I mean, we kind of brushed over things. We hit it in about a half hour. We know you could do 4 hours on this, probably across the different topics if you want to go deep. But anybody have anything else to add?
The one thing I forgot was the PWA version of Teams. So Teams handles multiple users and multiple tenants like it's mad at it, like it owes it money or something. And so one of the ways around it is to go to Teams inside of Credge, and then go from the little menu thing, install his app, and you can have 2 instances of Teams. That is the only thing that keeps me from screaming profanities at Teams on an hourly basis, is the fact that, like, right now I've got this in one instance of Teams and I've got the chat in another instance of Teams. And if somebody from another tenant texts me in Teams, I can do stuff. That is gold right there.
Yeah, the pin app is huge.
Does pop-out meetings help that, Todd?
I don't think we have pop-outs. So no, I don't think it would, because there's still that issue where if I'm in a meet, so this is a great example. I'm in a meeting right now that's hosted in Sympraxis. If somebody in another tenant sends me an IM and I see it in Teams, if I click that IM, it will log me out of this meeting.
Gotcha.
Because the Teams process can't have 2 security things in memory at the same time, so it flushes this one to bring the other one up.
Got it.
So having the pinned as app thing is beautiful.
Cool. Shelly, anything else that you have for the group?
I think it's really helpful that you guys are doing this series, so I appreciate it. Some of the topics obviously are, more directed to the more technical sides of it, but I like the fact that you're trying to balance the topics.
Yeah, we're doing best we can, and what'll really help is if people submit questions to the Ask Sympraxis, where we have the form that they can submit questions, because that'll give us topic ideas so that we can, basically fulfill what people want to hear. We can guess to a certain extent, but it's nice to hear what people really want to talk about.
Yep. Yeah. So Shelly, I'd encourage you in the future, like, this time is yours, right? Bring questions. We can be very specific and directive. I'd rather this be less of a presentation and more of a dialogue with people in the user community.
Sounds great. I will put on my thinking cap about things that may have broader appeal.
Thanks.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
And hopefully we'll talk in 2 weeks with our topic, Microsoft 365 community content, something that Mark has had a really big role in, and I think is near and dear to a lot of our hearts.
Yeah, I'd like to be a little bit more involved, and I have to say that I'm quite shy on approaching that because I just don't know the rules of the road. So thinking about that topic, having some better guidance around, how the community works, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, touching other people, I don't know enough about that process to feel comfortable wading into it, quite frankly.
That's exactly what next week is about.
Yeah, and you're also going to want to go look up David Warner's Sharing is Caring series, where he does webinars to help people get started contributing. And he's going to, Mark, you might be able to speak to this. Isn't he going to do one specific to the community content?
Yeah. But Shelly, you do happen to know the person who manages the whole thing pretty well. So
I know, but I've been a little busy and B, a little shy. And I need to get over both of those things.
Shelly, I believe the busy part.
Shy and Shelly can go together.
Well, seldom right, but never in doubt.
Anytime you want help, let me know.
All right. All right. I just, I don't want to step on people's toes. I like to edit. I think I'm a pretty decent editor, but I also want to be respectful of how that process works.
It's intimidating. Like, not for
is.
nothing. Even if you use GitHub and know what you're doing, it's intimidating to do it the first time. I mean, when Vesta slapped my hand, I was like, Jesus.
It's 100% of the reason why I have done more.
And I think that, getting people to the comfort level where they feel that they're doing things in a respectful way will be really helpful to enhancing the participation.
Yeah.
Let's all get over that together.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
2 weeks from now?
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks
2
from
weeks
now.
from today.
You got it.
Wow. I might even share video if.
Yeah, bring your friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, what might be really super useful is if Mark can do a demo. That would actually maybe be useful. We could do one together.
Yeah, because I am not a big GitHub user, and I stumble around in there like kind of an blind idiot.
You and everybody else push, pull, ride round. It's really
that's
confusing.
nice to hear that it's not a unique experience, but
not at all.
I will definitely make sure that it's a must attend for the next session.
Yeah, I think a great future topic would be GitHub for non-devs.
Yes. Yeah, because the expectation for people who think in the land of words is a little bit different.
Sure.
Oh, it's very different. No doubt.
All right, cool.
See you June 3rd.
Yeah, 2 weeks from today. Thank you. And Shelley, thanks for joining us and providing us some feedback today. Thanks, Todd, and for the prep and the rest of the team. And we'll plan to talk again about on the next Sympraxis in 2 weeks.
Enjoy this beautiful day.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Go play outside.
Thank you.